Oh, I see.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada. All glories to our revered speaker for today, the 13th day of Monday, 2025. And we have one of our sweet aunties, Her Grace Mother Malati Devi, who will be speaking to us from the Nectarian Srimad Bhagavatam. So we encourage devotees, if possible, please, you may turn on your cameras and turn off your microphones and be rapt attentive. So, Mother, we thank you, and we may put the verse on the screen and you take it over from here. Hare Krishna, thank you. And since this is our first time meeting, we humbly say Happy Krishna Conscious New Year to you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, our first meeting of the new year. So there's two verses today, 30 and 31, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 5th chapter, and text will be 30 and 31. Aham tattva guru vikuruvanam manovaikara kada bhut vakasa bhut vakara kaschaye deva arta bhivyanam janam yata. And we have our word by word in translation, which Srila Prabhupada very carefully included in all of his translated books so that we would have some context between the Sanskrit and the English translation. So this aham tatvat, from the principles of false ego, by kur, vanat, by transformation, mana, the mind, vaikarikat, by interaction with the modes of goodness, habut, generated, vaikarika, by interaction with goodness, cha, also, yea, all these, deva, demigods, artha, the phenomenon, abhivyananjanan, physical knowledge, yata, source, and translation by his divine grace. The false ego is transformed into mind by interaction with the modes of goodness. All the demigods who control the phenomenal world are also products of the same principle, namely the interaction of false ego and the mode of goodness. His divine grace's purport. False ego facing with different modes of material nature is the source of all materials in the phenomenal world. Next. Tajasan indriyanyaiva yana karma mayani cha. Synonyms. Taijasani, the mode of passion. Indriyani, the senses. Eva, certainly. Jnana, knowledge. Philosophical speculations. Karma, fruitive activities. Mayani, predominating. Cha, also. A translation by His divine grace. The senses are certainly products of the mode of passion in false ego, and therefore philosophical speculative knowledge and fruitive activities are predominantly products of the mode of passion. Purport. The chief function of the false ego is godlessness. When a person forgets his constitutional position as an eternally subordinate part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and wants to be happy independently, he functions mainly in two ways. He first attempts to act fruitively for personal gain or sense gratification, and after attempting such fruitive activities for a considerable time, when he is frustrated, he becomes a philosophical speculator and thinks himself to be on the same level as God. This false idea of becoming one with the Lord is the last snare of the illusory energy which traps a living being into the bondage of forgetfulness under the spell of the false ego. The best means of liberation from the clutches of false ego is to give up the habit of philosophical speculation regarding the absolute truth. One should know definitely that the absolute truth is never realized by the philosophical speculations of the imperfect, egoistic person. The supreme truth, or the supreme personality of Godhead, is realized by hearing about him in all submission and love from a bona fide authority who is a representative of the 12 great authorities, in other words, the 12 Mahajans mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. By such an attempt only can one conquer the illusory energy of the Lord, although for others she is insurpassable, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7:14. So Om Agyan Timirandasya Janana Sakalaya Taktum Muditam Yena Tasme Sri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskachya Desatarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Ancha Kalpa Tarubisha Kripa Sindhu Vaivyacha Patitanam Pavanevambhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So just 1 minute. There's something in my way here. Yeah. Yeah, this, first of all, I do want to say how happy I am to see all of you who I can see, even if it's just your names, and to be with you on the beginning of the new year. It's already like passing kind of quickly, it seems. So I had the wonderful opportunity of being in Puerto Rico for the new year, which I generally am because it's the time of Rath Yatra there. So a very lovely Rath Yatra. And then the new year was quite interesting because on the 31st, the day before, the last day of the year, at 5:30 a.m. in the morning, all electricity went out over the entire island of Puerto Rico, and it did not come back until In some cases, a few days, depending on where you live, but midnight, which is usually the big, celebration, it was in little areas people were doing, but without electricity. So there wasn't all the madness that's usually associated with running here and there to different nightclubs, different situations, because it was just pitch dark. And only the large established hotels, for example, are the cruise ships. All these people that came to Puerto Rico to have a great time were having another type of great time in the mode of darkness and silence. But as I say, the cruise ships and big hotels, look, they had lights on. And here and there, all over, people had their fireworks. And I was really fortunate to be in Jaicida's place, which it was in such an area where it wasn't too loud. And being deaf, I just took out my hearing aids so I didn't hear them, the booming fireworks. And you could see, jumping up in the sky. And people, the next day I was out and there were people that were so disturbed because not only did they not have electricity, but in some cases, because their water depends on electricity to get pumped, so they didn't have water. And some people got locked into their high-end living situations because they had electronic gates and the electricity wasn't working. So if they were on one side, they couldn't get in. If they were on the other side, they couldn't get out. So Krishna gave everybody an opportunity to reflect upon their condition in life. And some people actually were, who I talked to, were actually seeing this as actually, this was for them a good experience because they started thinking about, here I came to enjoy. Does the fact that there's no electricity mean I can't enjoy? They started thinking about what their situation was. Anyway, let's speak a little bit here. You know, so we're talking about the Mahatvat, and this is generally, involves the ahankara, the false ego. And the false ego is not a very it's not such a great part of our life, but it's definitely a part of our life. And the best thing about it is you actually can become free from it if you want to. But unfortunately, many people are quite attached to the illusory energy of the Supreme Lord. And that attachment digs deeper and deeper as time goes on in their lives. And even when they see something isn't right, they're so attached that they don't want to consider letting go. But for devotees who are coming to Krishna, Krishna is very kind, and he gives us a way out of the illusion according to our desire. And sometimes it's a little confounding for devotees. How is it? I'm a devotee. How is it that I'm having these situations coming upon me? What's going on? The classic saying, why do bad things happen to good people? But our process is one of meditation upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because Him alone, He alone, can actually extricate us from this illusory energy. So then the question is how to meditate. What should I meditate on? And it's explained in the 28th chapter of the third canto that the yogis, devotees, should meditate or contemplate with full devotion on the compassionate glances cast by the Lord's eyes. And why? Because they soothe the most fearful threefold agonies of his devotees. And now what? We are hearing devotees have agonies, threefold agonies. We're thinking we're getting out of this, but we're finding out here in the Bhagavatam, actually, devotees are also getting cut up in the threefold agonies. But for the devotees, there's a way out. His glances, accompanied by loving smiles, are full of abundant grace. So that soothes the agonies. And then Prabhupada explains, as long as one is in conditional life, meaning in the material body, it is natural that one will suffer from anxieties and agonies. And our minds as devotees are, hey, wait a minute, this isn't what I signed up for. I'm going to suffer agonies and anxieties. I thought I was getting out of that. But Prabhupada points out, one cannot avoid the influence of material energy, even when one is on the transcendental plane. That's something we have to accept. That's a reality. So further that we get, okay, these disturbances come, but these agonies, these anxieties of the devotee are at once mitigated when they think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his beautiful form or the smiling face of the Lord. So it's explained by Prabhupada that the Lord bestows innumerable favors upon his devotees, and the greatest manifestation of his grace is his smiling face, which is full of compassion for his pure devotees. So in other words, you can't compare the situation of a devotee with a non-devotee, because for the devotee, we understand who to turn to and how to turn to Krishna. And the result is by remembering Krishna, and in particular, seeing his smiling face, we get the innumerable favors, and the greatest manifestation of his grace is the smiling face. Now, maybe some of you remember, I think it's 115, Bhagavatam 115, somewhere in there. So Arjuna had gone away. He was separated from the family. And during that separation, he came upon the disappearance of Krishna. And that was a shattering experience for him. You could say earth-shattering, heart-rending. And when he came back, without even saying a word, Yudhisthira, just took a look at him and he understood something's wrong. He starts inquiring, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you see this? Giving all kind of possible scenarios. And then finally, Arjuna starts to explain the situation, what had happened. And as he started explaining, because it was surrounding, the situation was surrounding Krishna, even though it was his disappearance, by remembering Krishna, then he was remembering all the times he was seeing Krishna and speaking to Krishna and all of the wonderful instructions that were given to him by Krishna. And by this remembrance, it said, all the trash in his heart disappeared. So we can take great comfort that we have this way out. We're not escapist in a false sense. People sometimes they want to escape life. We want to embrace life. We want real life. We want living yoga. So, in other words, we want to always be in the company of Lord Krishna and his devotees. And therefore, in order to effect this constant companionship with Lord Krishna, so that we actually extricate ourselves from the, as is often said, the clutches of illusion, the clutches of Maya. So we should meditate. And there's another very nice explanation of how to do that. With devotion seeped in love and affection, meditate within the core of the heart upon the laughter of Vishnu. So on one side, um, the yogi is contemplating the compassionate glances of the Lord's eyes, and They soothe his miseries. His glances are accompanied by loving smiles, and those loving smiles are full of abundant grace. And then we find out that we can't avoid these miseries, actually, but they can be mitigated through this beautiful meditation on the Lord's form and his smiling face, and that the greatest manifestation of his grace is his smiling face. And then there is a description that is absolutely delightful. So, with devotion steeped in love and affection, the yogi should meditate within the core of his heart upon the laughter of Lord Vishnu. Now, we've all read Bhagavatam. Many of you, not necessarily myself, have read it, the entire 12 cantos many, many times. Some of us, I'm kind of one of those, I go over and over certain cantos, certain chapters. And every time I do that, I come across something that how I had not noticed this before. So when I was reading this particular translation, and it was explaining how the yogi should meditate upon the laughter of Lord Vishnu, how did I miss that? I'd never thought of that. I can't even remember reading it. And not only that, the laughter of Vishnu is so captivating that it can be easily meditated upon. So when the Supreme Lord is laughing, it's described, one can see his small teeth, and the small teeth, they resemble the jasmine buds. And the jasmine buds, which are generally white, but they're rendered rosy, like by, reflection from the splendor of his lips. And we know from the beautiful prayer that we sing during Kartik about Krishna's lips are reddish like the bimba fruits, right? So here we have the captivating glances of the Lord, which are full of abundant grace, and his loving smiles that are full of abundant grace. And we have an instruction, a hint. Here's what you do. Here's how you meditate on the smiling face. But then it goes further. And not only the smiling face, but the laughter of Lord Vishnu. It's so captivated, it can be easily meditated upon. So once a devotee is devoting his mind like this, then the devotee, the yogi, should no longer desire to see anything else. So very important consideration. And then it's explained that by following this course, the yogi gradually develops pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And how does this show up? In the course of this progress towards devotional service, if one is actually advancing, then the hairs of the body stand erect through excessive joy. And then a constant stream of tears is occasioned by intense love. It says he's constantly, the yogi, the devotee, the meditator, constantly bathed in a stream of tears due to this intense love. And then gradually, even the mind, which is being used, the mind is being used, it's being coerced, forced, manipulated into becoming attracted to the Lord. The mind withdraws from material activity due to this attraction. That becomes a permanent feature in the yogi's life. So in other words, meditation, it's an action of the mind. It's not a perfect stage of samadhi or absorption. Like, you see people come and they get in a particular position, one way or the other. And, for a few minutes, maybe up to an hour, they'll be sitting in such a position, whatever they're thinking about meditating. But what is the actual outcome? So we know what the actual outcome is, what it looks like, and how to get there. And the mind is used, but is to get to this stage of absorption. But in the higher senses, when you actually get up to this higher stage, where you actually are becoming face to face with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there's no longer any question of using the mind. The devotee becomes accustomed to serving the Lord by purification of his senses. So this is also just a wonderful feature to consider. And naturally, when you're in that situation, there's no question of ahankara. There is no false ego. So the yoga principles of meditation, they're only required as long as one is not situated in pure devotional service. The mind is they like to use this word tool nowadays. So the mind is a tool used to purify the senses. But when the senses are purified by meditation on the Supreme Lord, on his smile, on his laughter, there's no need to sit in a particular place and try to meditate upon the form of the Lord. One becomes so habituated that automatically one's engaged in the personal service of the Lord. And then when one's mind is like, in the beginning, it's forcibly like dragged into engage. We sit down and the mind takes a detour and we pull it back. So that's forcibly engaged upon the form of the Lord. So at that stage, it's called nirbija yoga or lifeless yoga. The yogi does not automatically engage in personal service to the Lord. So in this nirbija samadhi, the mind has no thoughts, nothing but consciousness or this awareness. It's described as seedless. There's no fructification. But when the devotee is constantly thinking about the Lord, this is called sabija yoga or living yoga. So this is where we're headed. One has to be promoted to the platform of living yoga, to engage in the service of the Lord 24 hours a day, as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, the stage of Premanjana Charita. It can be attained by developing complete love. And when one's love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead and devotional service is fully developed, then one always sees the Lord, even without artificially meditating on his form. That the vision, your vision will become divine because there's no other engagement. Like Prabhupada would say, just like Arjuna, who was standing there talking to Krishna face to face, and we can also come to that stage. And at the stage of spiritual realization, so it's not necessary to engage the mind artificially. Since the meditation recommended in the lower stages, it's a means to come to the platform of devotional service. And those already engaged in transcendental loving service of the Lord, they're above such meditation. This stage of perfection is called Krishna consciousness or living yoga. So, from this we can understand, it's clear without any doubt that there's no chance for permanent success if one attempts to meditate on a void, a nothingness, a light, or so many other varieties of focus recommended by persons who are not concerned with achieving transcendence. There's there's unlimited, actually, short-term feel-good meditations that ultimately only divert one's attention, divert the intention from the absolute truth in the form of love of God. But in any case, with the meditation, so even our meditation is what? The Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And who is it that this mantra is meditating on? Is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his eternal energy, Radha. Hare, Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. So anybody who's going to meditate, sit down, chant your rounds, for example, you need a good environment. Put yourself in a good environment. Like going to the mall to chant your rounds, for example, is not a good environment. Just to use an example. Or So you get a good environment so that you're not distracted. And then you set your intentions, set the intentions, so we can use the 10 offenses in reverse and set it is an offense too. We say, I will not so and so, I will not so and so. So that can be the intentions, giving a direction to your chanting. And then posture is inevitably mentioned, but there is a description in Bhagavad Gita, but it's not absolute. Sit up, head erect, etc., looking at the tip of the nose, etc. But it's not so absolute. What's more important is that the pure devotee of the Lord is not committing offenses while chanting the holy name. And the best way to do that is to chant the holy names under the direction of a pure devotee. So that if you're taking a direction of a pure devotee or an advanced devotee, that's offenseless chanting. And the real independence means complete faith in the mercy of the Lord without dependence on conditions, material conditions. Sometimes we're thinking, if I can just adjust this, if I can just get that, if I just do this, then I can, sit and chant. Then I can sit and we're putting barriers, in other words. But what we need to do is develop complete faith in the mercy of the Lord and give up the dependence on conditions of matter. And why? Because they're all temporary. They're always shifting. So I was considering how people come to Krishna consciousness, and now we have a lot of interaction with yoga groups. And they are not always necessarily coming with any alignment initially with, with Krishna, with God. And most of the yogas being taught are basically giving some kind of exercise or breath, pranayam, some hatha yoga, where you have to be meditative on how you move your body, how you breathe, but it's not going to free you from the bodily concept of life, which is keeping you in the ahankara, So, and sometimes what they tell you to meditate on is kind of, okay, you can do this, but you're not going to go anywhere really. So, like, okay, meditate on your breath or visualize something, create a peaceful vision or inspiring mental image, something on nature, like, a calm scene on the beach or a forest. But right now, the calm scene on the beach might be a tsunami, and the forest is probably going to be on fire. So that's not particularly calming. And even you create this peaceful mental image, and then what, So we are very fortunate because then what for us is the transcendental loving service of Krishna, which is ongoing, ever eternal, and the way we can actually come to become successful in the human form of life. Now, meditation isn't limited to Eastern philosophical practices or scriptures. For example, I found in the Old Testament, there's the Psalms. And there's one Psalm which is very nice. It's, I think, 145. So it's telling people to meditate on God's attributes and actions and to meditate on scripture. And it's like the whole Psalms, it's like a poem, and it describes God's character and his works. And it declares that he will, if you meditate on these, then you also tell others about them. So like Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, I mean, very similar. And the Buddhists, they also meditate. Of course, they're not meditating on the form of the Lord. They're not meditating upon the Paramatma. They don't even believe in the Paramatma. But they have a fairly relaxed way of presenting meditation. There's not a particular position, like, there's no downward dog or a Surya Namaskar, that they say any position that allows you to remain alert and comfortable for a period of time is fine. So in other words, the meditation is the important thing. And I think this is something that is definitely applicable to Krishna consciousness. Don't get hung up too much in an external situation, like how you may or may not be sitting. It's important to be comfortable. Otherwise, you're going to just be feeling, your discomfort, which is going to take your mind away from remembering Krishna or thinking about Krishna, unless you've already achieved that high level of transcendence. And the Buddhists, their meditation recognize that suffering is universal. So we've mentioned that a bit. But you can end it by freeing yourself from unhelpful desires. But they don't quite have a recipe for that, and they don't describe what are these unhelpful desires, such as we find described in Bhagavad Gita. And one other kind of startling thing is that their non-self principle challenge the belief that you have a permanent soul. They don't accept that. Their ultimate goal of meditation is to achieve this enlightenment or nirvana, like a profound state of wisdom and freedom from suffering. But what about you, the soul? So that's kind of left out of the picture. The Quran is also really interesting, and also the practice that they have a nice meditation. My Lord, admit me an honorable admittance. It let me depart an honorable departure, and grant me from you, the Lord, a powerful support. And they have this practice, this meditative practice. Jirik means repeating phrases from the Quran or names of God. And then Muraqabah, which is contemplating God's presence. This is a silent meditation. It says contemplating without words, but still on God's presence. And this Shama, which means using music or motion as a meditative tool. So we are not musicians. We're not using the Maha Mantra, but we are definitely, it's meditative, and motion through, dancing is definitely part of our type of meditation. And then what I found was really interesting, the Sufi meditation. So it's a core practice in the Islamic spirituality, and it involves self-inquiry and self-knowledge to develop a personal relationship with God. So that's really lovely, because God is a person. They're accepting that, where that's not, always clear in other aspects. We have a beautiful practice that goes on, and that practice is called arti. And it's a very extraordinary meditation. And it signifies various offerings made during the arti to the Lord. So like the Bhagavad Gita is analyzing the material world, it's made of the 8 elements, the earth, air, fire, water, ether, mind, sound, intelligence, etc., false ego. The earth representing all solids, water, all the liquids, fire representing the radiation and energies, and the air representing all the gases. Ether is the substratum for the existence of space and the transmittance of sound. And our minds, our best friend, or our best enemy, the subtle faculty for emotions, and intelligence, the subtle faculty for rational thinking, and of course, our friend, not the false ego, the invisible bond that causes the soul to misidentify with the body. So during the arti, these various elements are offered. You've got like the incense. Get this beautiful aroma of the incense, and well, some places now are they're using teeny tiny sticks of incense, and then after the offering they snuff them out, which is very offensive because that's now prasadam. But smelling the aroma of the incense offered to the Lord is one of the processes in devotion. So you have that, and you've got the water representing, the elements of the water, the ghee lamp. There's the fire, the flower and cloth represent the earth, and then the yak-tail fan represents the air, and the sound of the conch and the bell represent the ether. And I've been trying to find out exactly how yak-tails are obtained. And so yesterday we had a discussion on that, and nobody knows exactly. Like my question is, to be more specific, are the yaks killed to get that tail, or do they just come and whack it off? And so I don't know, but it's obviously somewhere on the level of the conch. So the conch, we know that bone is considered impure, and yet the conch is a bone, and it's pure, so it could be something like that with the yak-tail. And so each item is offered by waving them in a circle around the deity. A reminder to keep the Lord at the center of our activities. Now, sometimes people doing the arti, they get all caught up in the number of circles as opposed to the meditation on the Lord's beautiful form. So, suggestion is don't get too caught up with the numbers, the 4, 3, 2, 7. Get caught up in the Lord's beautiful form. That would be very nice. Last weekend when I was in Alachua, I was looking on Prabhupada's Arti table, and they had a list. I saw this list, so I went to see it. So they gave a name of each item to be offered in the order it was to be offered, and then they had the number of circles so that the pujari could become more absorbed in the deity than the number of circles. So I thought that was a thoughtful consideration. So this word arti means before night. And this refers to the fact that the first arti in traditional temples, in our temples, it's performed right before the dawn ends. I mean, before the night ends in dawn. Mangala arti. That means auspicious. And as the darkness of forgetfulness of God tends to envelop us, the arti is performed to end the night of forgetfulness. We come in and that, it's such an amazing experience to come in the temple, and maybe the lights are generally a little dim in the morning, and bang, that conch shell blast out, and it's just kind of is definitely an awakening feature. And then the curtains open up, and standing before you are the beautiful forms of whatever the name of your Lord happens to be, Sri Sri Radha Damodar, Sri Sri Radha Vrindavan Chandra, Sri Sri Radha Govinda, so many beautiful forms of the Lord. And if we follow the meditation as prescribed in the Gita and as followed in the Arti with the feet on up to the beautiful smiling face full of grace, then we can actually find ourselves feeling some humility and gratitude for the presence, this divine presence of the Supreme Lord. So in other words, our standing in front of the Lord during Arti should be an active participation in meditation, beginning at his feet, just like the Arti offerings do. And then the offering happens, they become transmuted into carriers of the mercy or the prasad. So just like the ghee lamp comes around and we pass our cupped hands over, touch our forehead, and then the water. This is something too that I just mentioned that. So when the water is sprinkled, you should really bow your head. It's described, that's how, the water is thrown on the bowed heads. You bow your head, when the water is coming there. And smelling the flowers, the sanctified flowers reverentially. Now, obviously, we're smelling the fragrance, and this is Kali Yuga. There may not be a fragrance, but we can overlook that and have a mana, a mental fragrance. But putting some oils on the flower doesn't constitute the fragrance. That's another thing. The oils can be offered at the end of the arti on a cotton stick, waved under the nose of the deities. Quite often this is done during the Nrsimha prayers. So, so in order to actually get ourselves in a position of association with the Lord. We have to seek. It's explained in 3.25.25.1, must seek the association of persons who are in Krishna consciousness. But not just seek the persons who are in Krishna consciousness, but very important, they're engaging in devotional service. And Prabhupada points out, without such association, one cannot make any advancement. In other words, theoretical knowledge or study, they can't make appreciable advancement. One must give up the association of materialistic persons and seek the association of active devotees, living yogis, because without the association of devotees, one can't understand the activities of the Lord. So, like in general, people are convinced of the impersonal feature of the Lord. They will say sometimes, like, there's a higher truth, a higher element, but they haven't given it a name or actual recognition, just a concept. But that's because of not associating with devotees. They can't understand that the absolute truth can be a person, and the absolute person can have personal activities. Prabhupada said this is a very difficult subject matter. And unless one has personal understanding of the absolute truth, then there's no meaning of devotion. The service or devotion can't be offered to anything impersonal. Service has to be offered to a person, and hence the meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this living yoga, this perfection of our human form of life. So it was mentioned the 714 from the Bhagavad Gita, that this divine energy of mind consisting of the three modes of material nature is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. And so we have just heard a few ways of meditating, which is taking us to the shelter of the Lord, to the surrender of the Lord. And one thing to keep in mind is both material and spiritual natures are emanations of God. They're both eternal, spiritual energy, material energy. But the living entities, we belong to the eternal superior nature of the Lord, but due to contamination by the inferior energy, quite often called Maya, then our illusion is also eternal. So the conditioned soul is sometimes called Nityabhata, or eternally conditioned. Like you can't trace out what time in history. Like we can trace out our birth on August 30th, 1945 at 11 something p.m. in the morning. Malati Devi Dasi, then called Melanie, was born. We have a time frame. And similarly, we have at a certain point, we're going to have another date where we haribol and take leave. But this Nityabhata, eternally conditioned, you can't trace out when did this happen? So this inferior material energy, it's also a divine because of its connection and movement by the divine will, but it's not the preferred. It's not the preferred energy, you know. Another meaning of, we talk about the gunas, like another meaning is rope. So it's understood that conditioned soul is tightly bound by the ropes of illusion, tightly bound by the ropes of Maya. And someone who's bound, hands and feet, if your hands are bound, your feet are bound, usually you're going to need the help of a person who is not bound, a liberated person, to gain freedom. So therefore, only Lord Krishna, or his bona fide representative, the spiritual master, can actually release the conditioned soul. And devotional service or Krishna consciousness can help one gain such a release. So Krishna, being the Lord of illusory energy, he can order this insurmountable energy to release the conditioned soul. And he orders this release out of his causeless mercy on the surrendered soul. And Prabhupada pointed out of his parental affection because the living entities are originally beloved sons of the Lord. So both Brahma and Shiva, they're also under the influence of Maya. Only Vishnu is the master of Maya, Krishna, and therefore only Krishna alone can give the release from the clutches of illusion to the conditioned soul, and then one becomes Nityasiddha, or eternally liberated. It's like a crossover. So that are some considerations, for us to consider. Something I wanted to mention, but I totally. Oh yeah. So we talk about the demigods. We sometimes talk, and we don't worship the demigods. We honor them. But I found a nice comment by Srila Prabhupada, and he was saying demigods mean devotees of Krishna. That's all. So somebody asked, "What's a demigod?" He goes, "Demigods mean devotees of Krishna. That's all." So I offer all of you, beautiful devotees and demigods, my humble obeisances. All glories to Prabhupada.
Jai, Hare Krishna. Demigods and demigoddesses. Hare Krishna. Mother, we thank you so much for blessing us with your presence and wisdom today. And dear devotees, if anyone may have questions, comments, realizations, you may want to ask or share, please indicate by using the hand emoji, and you will be asked to unmute to ask.
That's a good question, but maybe they have something they can contribute to.
Well, that's what Mother is saying. If there is any contribution, Mother, in fact, I had a question prepared for you before you even spoke. So, because I heard a statement, and I said to myself, "Good, I know whom to ask this question to." But before I do that, I have a question from today's text, because we're talking about the false ego.
Yeah.
And this false ego is the cause of all of our problems.
Yep.
And of course, I'm not Krishna. I cannot decide for Krishna what to do, what not to do. But in my mundane sense, I see when a mother has a crawling baby, the mother tries to put away so many things for the child's safety, because she knows that the child may be picking some things and putting in his or her mouth. So
they may put their fingers in the electric socket.
Yes. So Krishna, knowing that this false ego is the cause of the problems of the living entities, why wouldn't Krishna take away this false ego so we all can become free?
That's up to us. Immediately he can free you from any type of illusory condition situation if you want it. It's just like the chanting of 16 rounds. Most of us are like, pushing through and, finding so many distractions. And that wouldn't be there if this is all we wanted to do. But we want it. But on the other hand, we also want some other things. So there's a mix. As soon as we are fixed, then any distraction, any type of situation that is going to hamper our devotional service will be withdrawn.
This false ego is a problem. Well, thank you. Thank you for answering my question. Does anyone else have something to ask before I ask my question tailored for Madam Malati, even before she appeared here today? Well, Mother, what it was is that I was listening to lectures online, and I came across one devotee, I won't mention the name, He seems to be a very relevant devotee in his school. MALATI.
Yes, I have a question.
Sorry. And he was saying
I
that.
have a question. Hare Krishna.
Okay, I'll pause it.
Okay.
All right, Mother Jamavati, you said you have a question. You may go ahead, please.
Yes, Hare Krishna. All
Hare
glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Malati Prabhu.
I have a question. Sorry.
You mentioned the 12 Mahajans
Yeah.
as authorities, and I was just wondering, was that number influenced, and was that the number that Srila Prabhupada came up with regarding appointing the 12 GBC? Was that his idea?
No, this is from Bhagavatam. In one place from the Bhagavat Purana, there's 21 Mahajans are listed, but normally where it's like the one of the 12 perfected spiritual authorities. So Brahma, Narada, Shiva, the four Kumaras, Kapila, Swambhuv, Manu, Prahlad, Janaka, Bhishma, Bali, Shuka, and Shukadev and Yamaraj. Those are the 12 Mahajans that are regarded as the greatest devotees of Lord Vishnu.
Mm.
And the Mahajan means one who is authorized by the Lord and who knows what is the law of the Lord. He is Mahajan. It's not that others can't be Mahajans, but these are our, you could say, our Mahajanacharyas.
I see. Thank you very much.
You're welcome very much.
Well, I think Mother Malati, Mother Jambavati's second part to the question was that the 12 Mahajans mentioned in the scriptures, Srila Prabhupada helped us understand that. Could that be the reason why Srila Prabhupada nominated the initial 12 GBC representatives?
That is a total speculation.
Okay.
Sorry, it was a practical consideration based upon, our size at the time,
Okay.
location and all.
Okay. Well, thank you for the answer. But if I may go back to what I was just about to ask, is that there was this devotee, kind of very relevant devotee in ISKCON, who was saying that Srila Prabhupada said that I did not ask you to wear dhoti and sari. You wanted to. And I did not ask you to wear sikha. You wanted to.
Okay, right
And
there.
I am surprised that that could be the case. And I said to myself, well, I know somebody who was very close to Srila Prabhupada from the very beginning. I would ask.
First of all, there's many devotees who like to speculate on things they would like to be for their mind.
Yes.
Now, Prabhupada, in one level, didn't tell us what to wear, per se, but on the other hand, he did. He said, when you go to the temple, you can find this in the letters, and maybe next time I speak, I'll get all this information, because I actually have done a short little presentation on this. Like he didn't, when I was initiated, the day I was initiated, I had a brand new skirt, and Shamsundar had some new jeans. When we got married a couple of days later, 2 or 3 days later, there was one sari in the Hare Krishna movement. It belonged to Janaki, and I wore it. That sari got worn by 5 different ladies, actually, because we didn't have a sari. But she did. She was the first married person. But on several occasions, we could see it was pleasing to him. And he would describe the devotees of Krishna and how they were dressed. And when we made our first attempts at wearing saris, we could see it was very pleasing to him, and we wanted to please him because we understood by pleasing the spiritual master, then one gets, more access to Krishna. And then you get the people, oh, but that's just material, that's just external. Nothing connected to Krishna is material or external if you're doing it to please Krishna and the spiritual master. But at the same time, he also said you can dress, dress nicely, like gentlemen, American boys and girls dress nicely. In other words, not, crazy kind of. I mean, in those days, there was a lot of outlandish costumes that people were wearing. But if he would travel and he would bring one of the male devotees, quite often he had them put on a suit and tie to look like a gentleman so that people would understand these are serious people. I was listening yesterday, driving back to New Vrindavan from Columbus, and we were listening to the audio of Mukunda Goswami's book. And, he was mentioning how Prabhupada asked him to take him to the embassy, no, maybe it's a consulate because it's San Francisco. At any rate, he wasn't expecting that. And he wasn't, particularly properly dressed, you could say, it was casual clothes. And but on other times, with good notice, he was describing he had a suit and a tie on, his hair was combed. He wanted us to look like ladies and gentlemen so that people would take us seriously. And also for ourselves, if you're all slouchy and messed up looking, it kind of reflects your consciousness, when you kind of present yourself in a clean, groomed manner, you tend to behave in that way too, generally. And we actually were very happy to put on a sari. It was because, we were rebellious hippies, so anything that was just contrary to what, we were very happy to do it. Like when we got married, we get that red thing in the part of our hair. And so we asked Prabhupada, what does that mean? And he told us as well, they used to have like maybe they would fight, the Chatris, they would fight over the lady, and the winner would take his sword and dip it in the blood of the loser and mark the lady's part. Now, probably if you tell people about that nowadays, they will kind of like be a little shocked. But we thought that was really very cool, a little bit. But is that necessary? What is necessary, he said, is neck beads, tilak, and sika. He would sometimes call it a flag. Those are necessary. So, something to consider for those who think otherwise. And we should never think anything associated with Krishna is external or mundane.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mother. I think that is like my take-home lesson for today. We should not consider anything associated with devotional service to be mundane or to be external. That is very, very powerful, very important. Dear devotees, does anyone else have something to share? I'm not sure if I had mentioned this to you before, Mother, because we have one of our God brothers who passed away on Black Friday, day after Thanksgiving. And the body is not being disposed of, but it would be this weekend.
And where did he pass away?
In Ghana.
Oh, what was his name?
Eka Krishna Prabhu. He was originally Kirtanan Maharaj's disciple, very senior devotee, and then he retook initiation from Jayapataka Swami Maharaj. But he left his body on Black Friday, and the body will be disposed of, cremated, this coming Saturday.
May I ask, where was he when he passed?
He was he was the temple president of one of the centers in Ghana called Sunyani. And
may I ask, why did it take so long to take care of the body?
yes, because even though he is in Ghana, he doesn't have most of his families in Ghana. Most of his families are in Ivory Coast, the neighboring country. And they had to come before the devotees could do anything with the body, like disposing of the body. And it was around election time, and there was the fear that something pandemonium was going to take place. So people were afraid to travel. So that is part of the reason that it's been kept longer than usual.
That's very long.
Yeah, but our humblest request to you, Mother, is that you bless. I mean, he is already gone. You may bless him, but particularly his family.
I can petition Lord Nrsingadev.
Yes,
And
please.
he generally put the name underneath his lotus foot, so I can do that, you know.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
that's probably a good idea, because one of the reasons we quickly dispose of the bodies, you know, is so in case the soul is still hovering around, the body's gone, and it, you know, the soul can move on freely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
So,
quick. We'll do that. Put his name.
we're very much thankful and appreciative that Mother you do that for us.
It will be done. It will be done today.
Thank you so much, Hare Krishna.
That service, right?
Yeah, this devotee is so dear to lots of us. Very nice devotee, but
What was the cause behind his death?
the cause behind the death is a bit complicated that we may not be able to share it all here because of the time. But I may share with you directly, personally, about the cause of the death. It takes a bit while to share, but one thing that really struck me was how you were sharing with us when Yudhishthira saw Arjun.
Yes.
And he could tell that there was something wrong.
Yes.
And he started asking him, what happened? Did you do this? Did you do that? He asked so many questions until Arjun told him what had happened. And that demonstrates and reminds me how, as devotees, we should try to understand devotees and study devotees to see if there is something wrong, something isn't right. We inquire and see how much help we can offer. So I think that is a very good reminder to me, and I believe to all the devotees, that we take that into consideration. But sometimes we don't do that much often. So thank you so much for the shared wisdom with us today.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much. Dear devotees, well, Mother, before we close for today, if you have concluding words to say, please, you may do that.
I just offer you Prabhupada's blessings.
Jai.
Chant and be happy.
Thank you so much, Mother. We need it so badly. We need Prabhupada's blessings so badly. So, dear devotees, we're going to humbly request you all to kindly unmute, and we all chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra to express our appreciation to our dearest auntie, the Grace Mother Malati, for sharing her love and wisdom with us today. Jai. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare
Rama
Rama,
Hare
Hare Rama,
Rama, Rama
Rama
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Hare.
Hare.
Pancha Kalpataruscha Vastudevyachana Bhavanabhyo Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai.
Yay.
God bless us, devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna.